Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I am your host, Hannah Chapman, and I am here today. We are on like a somatic journey right now in the podcast, which is amazing. And I am here with Matthew Cooke, who is a somatic executive coach and facilitator, and he's the founder and CEO of Body-Based Breakthrough. And so we are going to dig in to some somatic practices and neuroscience and why it's important. And yeah, Matthew, thank you so much for being here. And then please explain more. Tell us who you are, why you do what you do. And yeah, let's go.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah. Well, yeah, a little backstory, I guess, kind of going straight into where we are today, who we serve. Out of school, I worked in tech. I was working at a company that we were building essentially like the Netflix for optimal living was the idea. And as head of content curation, I was really blessed. I got to speak with 200 plus of the world thought leaders and everything from like neuroscience to productivity to conscious business, conscious parenting, mindfulness and spirituality, health and fitness, like you name it. Unfortunately, at 24 years old, we were working 70 plus hour work weeks, which I think a lot of people can relate to. I kept getting these really dizzy, like flu-like symptoms every 2 weeks. And it happened for about 6 months straight until I fully eventually burned out. And it was so weird because it would be Friday afternoon. I would just start getting super dizzy and then get incredibly like a high fever and could barely move my body. And then by Sunday afternoon, Hannah, it was like ready to go. Let's like rock and roll for the next week. We had a thing of like, thank God it's Monday, like TGIM. There's a lot of hustle culture going on there. So when I fully burnt out, it was like my body and my mind were completely at war. And I really wanted to understand, yeah, why is my body, my mind, why are these two not working together? So I've spent the last, um, goodness, close to 15 years sort of creating my own PhD in trauma healing, burnout recovery. And so I've read hundreds of articles, like academic journals and articles and studies, gained over 1,000 hours of yoga teaching certifications. And then I've been very blessed. I've gotten to work with leaders. I've studied with leaders in this somatic or space. Peter Levine's work with somatic experiencing, organic intelligence with Peter Hoskinson, Dare, Irene Lyon. Like you could a large list of folks, and it's been such a blessing to get to learn from so many luminaries in this space. And for me, though, I realized it was in my yoga classes and on long walks that I got my best ideas, and I felt most connected to myself and had less anxiety or overwhelm. And so I created this really simple journaling and movement system. And I just began sharing it like for free with my friends and a few clients who I kind of thought these folks might be more receptive to this. And I quickly found out that this work could predictably, reliably help clients sort of understand their own anxiety, and imposter syndrome and depression, ADHD, and recover like 5, 10 times faster, because of our science-based process to get the body, the mind, and our actions to all work together in 15 minutes. Uh, Pretty wild. And so fast forward to 2021, and I'll keep this short, but fast forward to 2021, I was working with a group of executives, our senior leaders at a large tech company in Santa Monica, and the clients went through the session with me. It's funny, sometimes people will come out of our sessions with our facilitators, our coaches, and they kind of come out like a bear coming out of hibernation, and it's like they're kind of a little groggy and a little like they're just kind of fully coming to, sort of orienting back to the environment they're in. One of the guys came up and had his journal in hand, and he's like, "Where did you learn this?" And I at the time I was like, "Well, that's a yeah." Well, I mean, this is something I've kind of put together over the last, at that time, what was that, like 10, 12 years in? It's like, well, I've kind of just put I pieced this thing together between a lot of different things. And it's something that I feel really inspired about. And I thought he was gonna, oh, that's super cool. Instead, he said, that's a damn shame. Uh,
Why?
yeah, that was what I, I was like, oh, okay. What do you mean? And because I said, I was like, well, I've been able to do this individually with like thousands of leaders and different teams and things and groups. Yeah, he looked at me and said that. And he literally had like disgust in his face, Hannah. And I was like, what? And he said, there should be an army of people teaching this. You should not be the only one doing this. We
Mm.
need this, and there's only one of you. And so I actually have goosebumps right now. Like that was all I needed to hear. And so I thought, what if I take my understanding of sort of the high performance coaching industry, which I had been in, along with doing some of this process, and my trauma informed sort of body based background to really simplify, streamline, strategize, like and systematize the whole somatic coaching process, which is exactly what I did. And we called it body based breakthrough, or B3, if we want to be cutesy about it, B3. And so, yeah, on social media, people were wondering like why leaders and sort of teams at Google and Apple and SpaceX and Snapchat and we're really seeing the value in this methodology. And so I decided, yeah, like later that year, I created my first group. We helped six incredible women come, and it's not just women, but that just happened to be six incredible women come through our process, personally heal their own anxiety, imposter syndrome, and overwhelm, while professionally really filling the gap in their ability to help their clients really sustainably transform, without what we call the roller coaster of transformation, which we could totally talk about
Mm.
that, especially like when we just work in the mindset stuff. Sometimes we can get this sort of roller coaster effect. And to do it all without doing like a 3 year plus, trauma healing program. So,
Yeah.
somatic experiencing, which I've been so blessed to continue to work in all of these years, is a 3 year plus program. And so it is. It's like it's very deep. It's very clinical. It's very science based, and we use a lot of those components in it. And our program is 3 months. And so for us, it's about how do we. Our goal, our mission is by 2035 is we want there to be over 1 million trauma informed coaches out there,
Mm.
because it just breaks my heart, Hannah, that there are still coaches out there that someone's like, I'm just at the end of my rope. I can barely do it. People are like, but just keep pushing a little bit harder and you'll get
Right.
there. And
Hmm.
it's like, oof, that's information. Like with that, we need to be using that information of how slow somebody's body's asking to go, and not just pushing through.
Oh
So
my gosh. So, so
how is
much,
that for an opening? Yeah. That's a lot. I realize I'm
so much
just
to
like,
like,
yeah.
oh, so good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The trauma informed coaching, the body based coaching, yeah, so much that we're going to dig into here. I love this. So,
Yeah.
for anyone who listens regularly, we did recently have Ryan McBurney on the podcast as well that focuses on breath work. And we talked
Yeah.
about somatic healing and somatic response and what does that word mean, right? Because it's kind of a
Mhm.
buzzword right now. People are like,
It is.
what does that even mean? Right. So we talked about that, and soma means body of the body, right?
Hmm.
Somatic
Hmm.
as a practice is getting into your body.
Yeah.
And I'm also, so this is like I didn't we didn't talk about this before we started recording, but I have been listening to, I also have the hardcover, but haven't cracked it open. But instead I'm listening to The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah. By Bessel van
And
der Kolk. Yep. That's a phenomenal book. It's kind of a
it
classic in our industry. Yeah.
Yes, and I have been like, it's very interesting because I've been learning and incorporating a lot of this from kind of like you're saying, like from lots of different sources and
Uh-huh.
different mentors and different things that I've done. And then to just hear Bessel just talk about all of it, right? And it's all like, oh, it's
Hmm.
this is what it's from. This is what it's from. And the research that's gone into first PTSD as the kind of the forerunner, right? Of like, oh, we need to
Hmm.
figure this out for veterans and what's going on.
Hmm.
And then finding out, oh, this is not just veterans coming back from war. This is literally everybody.
All of us. Yeah.
Everybody experiences this. And the thing that I wanted to like tease apart a little more from what you said was the, you know, recognizing how slow some people need to go through their healing process or when to
Yeah.
slow it down. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe they are like charging forward on one area and that's fine,
Mhm. Mhm.
but they're asking you to slow down in this
Yeah.
other area, right?
Mhm.
And to hold the space differently.
Right.
And so I would love for you to let's go here first. Let's like
I love this.
why is it
Yeah.
important? Why is it
Uh-huh.
important to slow down and why is it important to um not just intellectualize, oh, this is
Mhm.
the problem I'm having. It's coming from this part of my
Right.
childhood. It's coming, right? Like, oh, I understand. Why do we need to use the
Yeah.
somatic method?
Mhm. Love this. Okay, yes, thank you. This is you're teeing it up so well. This is great. Yeah, so we our nervous system picks up 12 million stimuli per second. 12 million. And then our conscious mind picks up 40 to 50 bits per second. Yeah. Which is wild. Like there's the discrepancy is just so vast. It's just absolutely incredible. And so what's happening, we call it a bottom-up approach to coaching versus a top-down. So mind to body, or like brain to body, I guess, versus body to brain. So 80% of the communication that's happening inside of our system is 80% is body to brain. So our body is feeding information up to the brain. What the brain chooses to do with it, or if it even at this age, for some of us who've been spending 20, 30, 40 years not listening to our bodies, we may not even be aware of it. Um, and then 20% goes from the brain to the body. So
Mm,
when it's like I'm just going to willpower my way through it, it may work for a period of time, but at some point our bodies probably starts kind of screaming out, "Hey, this isn't working. This isn't working for me." So again, there's a really, really wide gap between what my body is taking in and sharing with the brain and vice versa. But the brain is not giving us quite as much info.
uh,
So yeah, it's
yeah.
it's massive. I mean, it's just incredible. And so bottom up coaching for us is really about what's emergent for a client or for the person that we're working with. It's like what is it's so good to set goals, and it's also our ability to renegotiate those goals or those agreements with other people to ultimately serve our bodies to be the most aligned for everyone involved. Because if I can't show up and do the thing at the end of the day and I fully burn out and you lose me as an employee or as a client or as a whatever, then it doesn't do you any good either way. So
Mm.
those are probably some of the biggest things that come to my mind.
Yeah, yeah, that's so this plays really well into kind of my approach to financial planning, even in X
Oh,
squared.
beautiful. Mm-hmm.
And what's so fascinating that I have been in this space since 2007. So it's been a
Uh-huh.
long time. I've been doing financial planning. I've been helping people um, like logic out their goals.
Yep.
Right? So here's the logic. Here's the goal that you want to achieve. Here are the ways that you can save. Here are the right accounts to save into, for tax purposes, blah, blah, blah. All of that important stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I have said for years, like that's important. It's
Yeah.
important for us to understand those aspects, the logic, the implementation, the actual like how to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed over the first, 10 years especially, I've really noticed how people weren't actually achieving their goals. Some people were great at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like just give me the numbers and I'll just do it every month and like no
Right.
problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a large portion of people who
Yeah.
couldn't couldn't get over the hump of I have these goals, I'm starting to save, and then something happens and
Mm-hmm.
it all goes away. And I just am
Yeah.
constantly having to start over, start over, start over. And so
Yeah.
I was experiencing that. I was noticing that with clients. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, what is happening? Why,
Mhm.
why are some people having no problem with it and why are other
Yeah.
people like just not? I noticed a lot of it was entrepreneurs, first of all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are some like logistical things that make sense about that, right?
Uh-huh.
Business owners, when something's going wrong in your business, the money comes out of your investment account and goes straight back into the business, right? If you got to
Absolutely.
make payroll, you got to make payroll, right?
Yep.
There's stuff happens.
Mhm.
And when we dig under that deeper, there are emotional and what I call money stories that
Yeah.
are actually tied to
Yeah.
the fear-based, the panic decision making, the
Mhm.
not noticing when things were like the first dominoes were starting to fall of something
Mhm.
going wrong and not fixing it then, right? Rather being in that kind of panic mode
Yep.
and then just making fear-based decisions.
That's right. Mhm.
And so that's when I started my practice, when I left the place that I was at and started my own practice,
Mhm.
my focus was that, hey, we have the logical, we need to work on that. That's great. But we are always going to also look at the emotional, look at the emotional side of money.
So cool. Mhm.
Why are you making the decisions that you're making? What's coming up? What's informing that? And a lot of times it is trauma or old stories, right? So a money
Yeah.
story, we can just call it like old money trauma, either from your
Yeah.
childhood or
Yeah.
from your parents or grandparents or who knows
Totally.
where they come from.
Totally.
And so what you're sharing here too, it's that same, right? So there's the top down is the
Mhm.
what's happening with your
The
money,
brain
like
to the body.
right?
Uh-huh.
The brain to the body.
Mhm.
Okay, great. But then the actual decision, this is what I've really been finding. The actual decision making process is bottom up. It's what am I
Yeah.
feeling about my money? And then that's actually going to
Mhm.
drive my decisions, not the what am I thinking about my
100%.
money.
100%. Yeah, we actually teach a concept in our 3 month training about what we call somatic signature, which I think you'll probably dig. So there's sort of five elements of the human experience that make up our what we call our somatic signature. So thoughts, so that's like sort of the top down idea. There's also images. So in any moment of the human experience, we have these five things going on. It's sort of which channel are we tuned into. So we have thoughts, that's the one we're most aware of. We have images, so mental movies, pictures, memories of old past times. So it doesn't mean that that's literally happening in this moment, but for my experience, it is happening, right? I'm seeing the pink elephant, that whole sort of analogy. There's behavior or impulse. So, like, my body physically wants to do a thing. There's also emotion, like you said, and then there's sensation. So, like hot, warm, cold, buzzing, tingling, in my chest and my belly and my legs and my shoulder, these types of things. And so, what's interesting is that all of those give us data. So most of us just rely on the thought channel.
Hmm.
The reason we call it, I should say too, the reason that we call it somatic signature is like, just like I have a unique signature when I sign a document, Hannah has a unique signature, we sign a document. So each sort of question that we're holding in our lives, whether it's like how to spend, save, invest money, or it's about my relationships, or it's about the next path in my career or my health or fight, whatever, it doesn't matter. Um, they all each of these questions that we're holding holds a really unique meaning and significance to us, along with the various sort of like spider web of sensations, emotions, images, sort of impulses, behaviors when we take action. And so this is now you actually have science, Hannah, that you can totally like speak to with people. It's like, see, there's all of these channels of experience that are informing this decision ultimately of how you're going to move forward. And so if we just keep it in the thought channel, it's like, that's cool. But it also, there's all these other things that are playing into it. Um, I will say too, um, when it comes to entrepreneurs, and this is sort of an interesting one, many of us have in what my teacher calls an addiction to intensity.
Mm, yeah.
And I think I would even say like, I'm going to sound like an old person now, but it's like, it's like with social media and the internet and just like how quick things move now. I think we all now sort of have like our nervous systems are becoming primed more and more towards like more flashing, more lights, more speed, all of these different things.
Hmm.
But the interesting thing, oh, this is what I wanted to say earlier, is that because our body is picking up so much information, and our mind picks up so much less, our mind is like sometimes like 50 miles ahead of our bodies because it takes our bodies, again, another one of my teachers would say that our it takes our bodies 6 times more time to like let something go, to like process or digest information than it does the mind.
Mm,
So just to say, like, there is so much to financial planning, so much to like just all these different areas of our lives, and that's really the value of slowing down, is to recognize all these other data points that I don't think many of us are taking into our decision making. And that's where we go, dang it, I made the wrong decision. And it's because we didn't maybe tap into all these other channels of experience that are always occurring for us. And it's funny. I will just say as a caveat, because I know a lot of people are like, I don't feel any sensation, and it's probably true, but it's of your current experience. But the thing is, if you have a brain stem, which you do if you're alive, you experience sensation. The interesting thing is that these are trained. They're
mhm,
trained behaviors, and so are trained sort of these channels are trained. So growing up, like mom, dad, caretaker, parents may or may not have really put much value in sensation or certainly emotion. Like, there's that whole like big girls don't cry, big boys don't cry, like all the different things that we were taught growing up. So we just shut those things down. We just like it's still happening, but we just shut down any conscious awareness of it. And so that's part of our work together, is to work with people to slowly like let these things unwind and come forward with the information that they've been holding on to forever. And that's usually where burnout happens, is where one or two or more of these sort of channels are sort of like in direct opposition, and
mhm.
they're sort of fighting. And usually it's our thoughts with one of these other channels. Um, yeah, and there's other things to it too, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, okay, so that resonates so strongly, that sense that burnout comes from a, a dissonance,
Yeah,
right? Things fighting each other.
yeah,
And I like that. Before I launched X squared, that was a big place for me. I mean, like I was
yeah,
fighting, right? I could feel it, like panic attacks happening,
yeah,
different things like my body literally saying like, we gotta go. We have
yeah,
to get out of here.
yeah,
Um, we being my
yeah,
body, mind, spirit, all of it,
yeah.
right? Like the
It's
whole
total
package of
flight. Yeah, flight response. Yeah.
we gotta go. But then my brain, like, okay, how do I stay in it? How do I stay in it? How do I make it work? What do I say differently? How do I connect with people differently? Like all of that, right?
Hmm.
Like the thought channels
Yep.
trying to make it work and my body literally like being, no, no, we gotta go.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And so that aspect um of burnout specifically, I love that. And what I wanted to also share. So what I have experienced over the last several years now. So I
yeah.
launched X squared in January of 2021. So it's been almost 3.5 years at this
Uh-huh.
point.
Woo!
Yeah,
Congrats.
I
Yeah.
know. Like we're getting closer and closer to the 5 year mark. I'm excited about that. Um,
Um,
and a huge piece of what I had to shift and heal as I was, you know, moving even just through my first year was that I knew how to do everything. I
mhm.
didn't need someone to tell me how to do financial planning or, like any like
Right.
create my own firm even. It's like I had been in it for long enough and I
Yeah.
knew the basics of what I needed to do. It
Hmm.
was getting in touch with my nervous system and
Hmm.
and really allowing myself to express things that I had kept bottled,
Yeah.
right? And like move through a lot of the emotions and the sensations. So when you're talking about sensations, that was the thing that I had to really slow down and take time and learn to listen to. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been in the camp of like I don't have any sensation,
Sure.
but I would have been, like at the beginning I was like, one of my coaches would ask like where do you feel that in your body? I'm like, why
Yeah.
does that matter?
Right.
But then I
Right.
would still I'm like I'm open, I'm like figuring this out.
Uh-huh.
Okay, where do I feel that in my body? And I started to notice how strongly like my heart
Yeah.
talks to me. And
Mhm.
like, so then like the sensations. So for me, a lot of it was like, what sensation am I having in my chest? Does it feel
Mhm.
like fire? Does it feel like, sometimes it would feel like a band, like squeezing.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it would feel like fullness. Sometimes it would feel um, like contraction, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, oh, I feel
Mhm.
like it's like pulling backwards into my back, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
that the
Uh-huh.
sensation was always like, oh, this is interesting. It's telling me something.
Yeah.
And that was where, I've been able to start really tapping into like when I pay attention to it, I notice just how sensitive I am.
Yeah.
And so that's,
Mhm.
like that sensitivity. And I'm wondering, because one of the things that you had mentioned before we started recording is that like a lot of your clients or people you work with tend to be women,
Mhm.
not exclusively. I'm the
Yeah,
same.
not exclusively. Mhm.
But that sense of the sensitivity
Yeah.
that I feel that I've always felt since I've known since my whole life I've been sensitive. I was sensitive as a child,
Yeah.
but I would put armor over that, right? To be
Yeah.
like, okay, I have to protect myself to go into this situation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to dampen that
Yeah.
sensitivity somehow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there are plenty of people that write about that as well,
Mhm.
like armoring up, right?
Armoring up.
Emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that we're not like when we do feel the sensation, we're like, I'm just gonna stuff that down. I'm not gonna feel
Alright,
that right
sorry
now.
about that. Yeah. Yeah, 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 totally.
And
Well, yeah, I
so,
mean, you
yeah,
think
tell me more. What do you
well, I was just
take
gonna
from that?
say, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But did you're sparking something really big for me that I love is this idea that like as little kids, as little ones, like we're just experimenting. Like we're just being ourselves and we're just like fully out loud living. And it is we're just sort of like by trial and error figuring out what works for us. And usually that's where I guess you could say trauma occurs, right? It's like there's an opportunity where I try something new and I get like really shamed for it, or I get like physically like, whether I get, knocked over or something, like something happens that has me go, nope, never again. Like because it's biologically it's like an imperative to like survival, right? Is like I will not do that again because otherwise I risk death. Um, at least emotionally, mentally, physically, it might spiritually, it might feel like I'm going to die. And so we avoid those things. But then the interesting thing is now, as we start to go through this de-armoring process, we still have the wisdom to know what things are probably just like, yeah, that's just not going to help me. But there are certain areas that as we start to de-armor, and I actually get more sensitive, more intentionally sensitive to some of these channels of experience, then as I get more and more sensitive, I can start to make decisions with all those things in mind. So the cool part is then I can like kind of supercharge my decision making. So it's not like I have to just like go out and try to do like a million different things. I can really have like one, two, maybe three like very targeted efforts towards things because again I'm so sensitively aware that those are the right things. One of
Mhm.
the questions that we ask at the end of a session is like what is it that I know that I know that I know to be true, and it's this very like in my gut, in my heart for you, and everyone's a little different of like sort of where they sense those things, but if I can act from that place, life just becomes a lot smoother. I don't have to work so hard. And so I have so much more energy that I can delegate to that specific thing rather than the 15 other things I was trying, especially as an entrepreneur. Because
Mhm.
there's a million shiny objects we can all run after. So, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that the sensitivity piece, the thing I want to come back to there is connecting that right. You're literally connecting to your intuition
Yeah, that's
when
it.
you allow yourself right
Uh-huh.
to be sensitive to what you're feeling. And I love the five channels piece too, and that like
hmm
what is because we're all different, right? There are some people I've read, and this is like crazy to me. Some people who don't have an inner dialogue. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But you don't
What?
hear like your own thoughts all the time.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And some people who can't see visual.
Yeah.
right? They don't
Yeah,
have that mind's eye.
I'm one of those people when I'm reading a book, like I don't see like the vivid like movie in my of like what I'm reading. And a lot of people have that. My understanding. A lot of people can like
Yeah.
see the rich, like all the different things. I don't see that. It's just really fast.
Yeah.
Like image is just not as trained for me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And so when you,
Hmm.
but I've, so working with human design a lot, that's one of the things
Cool.
that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
absolutely love, right?
That's right.
There,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there are some not some, there are a lot of parallels to that, to like what your stronger intuitive sense might be
Hmm.
based on your design. And so for me, again, like coming back to that, the body awareness, that body sensitivity, that's a
Hmm.
really big one for me. And then the emotional sensitivity is
Uh-huh.
another really important one for me.
Are you
And
an emotional authority, Hannah?
I am not.
Oh, I
I'm
am.
not.
Okay. That's why I
Okay.
was curious. You
Yeah, I
say
am.
emotional, I was just curious.
Well, I'm sacral authority and I have
Uh-huh.
an open, not an open, but an undefined emotional center.
Uh-huh.
And that was the like, oh, I'm always filtering. I'm always filtering other people's
Uh-huh.
emotions.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so my like that's one of the places where I really can like tap into others. But
Uh-huh.
where's my intuition, right? Where's like
Yeah.
that
Yep.
piece, like the body, again, the body based.
Hmm.
Um, is really strong for me. And so when I'm thinking about like other clients that I work with, that as they start to hone their sensitivity, give space to, I think that's what you're talking about a lot, right? Like give
Hmm.
space to give, um, allow yourself to take time,
Uh-huh.
right? To focus on, okay, what's your main channel, right? Let's tap
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
these different channels and figure out which one you are
Hmm.
most sensitive to.
Yeah.
That's where moving from that intuition
Yep.
is it such a game changer. I
Totally. You know what you're actually just having me think too, like of like a fun analogy is like for so many of us, the reason we actually need to slow down initially, eventually, like you can actually get really quick with this stuff. And that's the cool part. But the reason we need to slow down for many of us is it's almost like as if we're trying to talk to somebody. And like when we were born, when we like came into this world, like it would be like our best friend that is like right in front of our faces. Like if it's like the body and the mind. But at some point they just like the body and mind like move apart. And you're like talking on these like walkie talkies and like maybe even like the stations are like on like the different channels or whatever,
Mhm.
and it's like you can kind of hear like some static, and that's where a lot of people are. And so we need to first flip on the right channel, like you just said, and then like sometimes we have to go slow to kind of decipher what it is the other person's saying on the walkie-talkie. And then all of a sudden it gets clearer and clearer. And I don't know, maybe you have a great discussion and then they move closer. And so it is kind of like over time. So it's not about just like always being slow, because I think that's where probably a lot of people are going to be like, I object to that.
I
No,
don't have time for
absolutely
that.
not. I can't. Yeah, I don't. I know I got time for that. And so it's not about always being slow. It's actually about just like taking time. If you're in this season to start to like unpack this stuff for yourself, which sounds like you are too with body keeps the score. Um, is really just to like slow down in the process of beginning to relate to your body again and like really find an intimacy again with the
Mhm.
body and a
Oh,
connection. So,
yeah, I love that. I love the um that sense of, or the phrase that was coming up as you were talking was, slow down to speed up.
yes, yes.
And
Love
that's,
that phrase.
but we have to. And even when you were talking about like thinking about back to babyhood, we didn't have we couldn't necessarily communicate well for a long time,
Hmm.
right? Like so like you're learning a new language, literally.
The language of the body. Yeah.
Right. And so you're slowing down in an effort to get to know your own body sensations, your own nervous system, right? You're
Hmm.
slowing down in order to speed up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean,
that's the shift.
yeah. The thing I'm realizing I didn't say, so even with somatic signature, like very heavily influenced by Peter Levine's work of somatic experiencing, and that I truly love, the thing that we were taught in somatic experiencing is um because I'm just realizing like some people are like, okay, great. So we're just gonna kind of like sit around and just like feel our feelings all the time. And like, what's the point of that? Because it's just like a never-ending well. But the issue is that when I'm stuck in some of these areas of my life. Because I think for some people, if you're moving quickly and it's working, like keep doing that. I don't have any issue with like it's like there's no like you need to go slow. It's actually like if going fast is working, then great. But if you're feeling stuck, um, in somatic experiencing, the big question that we always ask, and in B3 as well, is what didn't get to happen?
Mm.
Like what was missing? Again, so sort of going back to that moment, what was missing? Like and trauma is this idea of too much, too soon, too fast. Too much, too soon, too fast. Like my body did not get to integrate, process, metabolize, digest, pick a word that you like, that experience. Like it was just too big and too much and too soon. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't get to fully metabolize it. And so we're kind of asking like what didn't get to happen at that time. So even with your clients, Hannah, like I'm thinking about if they have like money stories, if they can kind of think back to when that money story first started, it's like what was actually missing? A perfect example could just be support, like support and like unconditional love of a parent in that moment, or or even just like being bailed out by mom and dad in that moment, or caretaker or parents, whatever it may be. But it's like there was something that was missing, and that's what we're trying to do with the body in a lot of ways is reclaiming. And then by reclaiming what was missing, we ultimately liberate our life force to go
Mm.
do other cool stuff in the planet on the planet.
Mm.
And that is what we're trying to do here. So it's not just like sitting around and feeling our feelings and kumbaya. And like that's great too. I love that stuff. I absolutely love it. But the point being in this is really like how do I ultimately liberate my life force to go do other cool stuff rather than being in resistance unconsciously, literally unconsciously between my thoughts or my body and my mind.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ugh, okay. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have enough time for you to tell us, like, okay, if someone is saying, one, like, okay, that's exactly what I need. I need to work through these things, right?
Hmm.
This is really resonating. Or if they're a coach and they're like, yes,
Hmm.
I need to be able to incorporate this. Or like for me, um, what that feels like for me is like, oh, I have been doing this work myself and incorporating it almost the way you said, um, at the beginning, like to with the clients who I know will resonate with
We're
it.
receptive to it. Yeah,
Yeah, are
totally.
receptive to it. That's how I started with human design as well. Is like
Uh-huh.
just kind of like, ooh, I think like this is something that you'll really like, and then had clients who were
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this is great.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that resonated for me as well. But like to bring this more, like bring it more full circle, bring it into more like even more holistic, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the place for, like you said, a lot of mindset coaches or
Health
executive coaches,
coaches,
yeah,
executive. Hmm.
everything. How can people find you, and what are like the resources um
Yeah,
that you have available for people?
totally. Yeah, if you go to bodybasedbreakthrough.com, we have a 15-minute experience of it. So it's recorded and it's lovely. And so you can actually just go through a body-based breakthrough experience there. You can totally follow us on body-based breakthrough on Instagram as well. It's kind of the
Mm,
big ones, yeah. But yeah, I mean, definitely reach out. Like, I love talking about this stuff. If somebody's like, I really truly need help right now, like I need like a nervous system reset. That's something that I love to do with folks as well. We get on a 45-minute session, and just to like sort of look over where you at right now. That's something we can totally do too. Just reach out to me on Body Based Breakthrough, on Instagram. Super
mm.
happy to chat with people about that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's I feel that this is the shift that's needed. Right, and it's been
Mhm.
coming. This isn't, like, new
It's not new.
information,
Yeah.
but it also hasn't been incorporated very well, or it hasn't been,
Yeah.
we haven't, um, I wanna say, like, more like the collective consciousness has wanted to,
Hmm.
like, ignore it, or, like,
Yeah.
how important it is to
Hmm.
be able to connect with your body. And,
Right.
okay, last thing we'll talk about,
Yeah.
we have a little bit of time,
Uh-huh.
being, I mentioned that I'm an elder millennial, like you said you are too.
Same. Yeah.
Right? And
35. So I'm kind of, I guess that's kind of the middle of the road, right? For a
we're kind of
millennial.
middle. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah,
Mid millennial.
I'm almost 40, so it's like,
Uh-huh.
Gen X was right ahead of me, but
Yep.
Gen X and millennials especially, we grew up in, maybe it's the older half of millennials, really grew up in a space of, you know, like, figure it out yourself, take care
Oh
of
yeah.
yourself, right? Especially Gen
Hmm.
Xers, right? The latchkey kids for sure, right? There just was no support,
Yeah.
really, like parental support. The one I hear a lot is, or the joke is, parents, there used to be a commercial on at 10 p.m. every night, like, do you know where your children are? And
Right.
I can't even imagine that for my children. I have three kids who are 13,
Yeah.
11, and almost 9. Like, doesn't
Yeah.
even make sense to me, doesn't compute, but that
Yeah.
was literally, right? We would just like be
Yeah.
gone all day, um,
Yeah.
with no
Yeah,
support.
because mom and dad have to climb the corporate ladder, you know? So that was
Right?
the 80s, right? It's like gotta climb the corporate ladder. So
Yeah, and that's so
totally.
that sense of, I'm saying this because I feel like our generation, or this kind of span of, especially like 30s to 60s,
Yep.
like, we didn't get a lot of nurturing
No.
as generations. And so
Mhm.
we tended to think it wasn't important growing
Yeah.
up, or it was definitely a piece that was missing,
Yeah.
that a lot of us are now realizing. And as we have kids and, like, shift the narrative, like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
showing up differently for my kids, I need to show up differently for myself too.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, actually, this is great. Super practical. It's gonna sound so silly because it's so simple, but I promise game changer for everybody here. So tune in for this. Um, when you're a little kiddo and you have a blankie. Well, in the somatic world, we call that a resource. So the
Mhm.
nervous system moves in these waves. It's an up, so it's intensity and intensity, de-intensity, or sort of like activation, deactivation. And so when anxiety occurs, ADHD occurs, even procrastination occurs, all of those things, that means there's too much intensity in the nervous system. So what's the opposite of up? It's down. And how do I get down? How do I settle the system? It's not about calming all the time, because, yeah, that's a whole nother topic, but settling, allowing the system to settle, is having resources. And so, to your point about like nurturing and nourishment, like we didn't get those things as much maybe in certain generations. And I don't, maybe we could say about all generations, I don't know, but that it behooves us, because this is actually a learned behavior. Self-regulation is a learned behavior. It's not inherent, actually. It's not innate. It's something that, like, ideally caretakers taught us at some point. But if they didn't, resources. And so resources could literally be like, I have a little stuffed animal on my desk, and sometimes I love squeezing them. Maybe you have a favorite mug, like that you just like drink out of all the time, and there's something about that mug that just has you go, yeah, that's nice, and there's a settling. Sometimes we have a painting or a plant. I mean, certainly being out in nature is incredibly resourceful. But the thing is that all of us unconsciously, in tiny ways, do this for ourselves. We have resources, but many of us are not conscious about it. So the cool part is like you can liberally apply resources at any time. Another good example is like maybe you have like a room. There's like a room in your house that you're just like, oh, this is my safe haven. Most people, it's like it's their bedroom. I don't know, it could be the bathroom because you could lock both doors and you like feel safe because you're contained in there. Some people, it's their car. There's something about like I can just roll up the windows and I can blast my music, whatever it may be. Music is a great resource. So I say all that because that's the thing that many of us were missing growing up, was resources. Like, because again, as a little kid, you're just trying to survive. Like you're just trying to like make it out here. It's a tough world. And so doesn't have to be true, right? But that's the feeling sometimes. It's like, man, stuff is tough. So now as adults, this is why we have candles and like comfy warm blankets and pillows and like cozy soups and things like that. It's like, for some weird reason, I think as adults, we're like, why can't you have a blankie? I don't know. It's like some of these
Yes.
things. So it's like I think we think that that's kids, like kids to be comforted, but as an adult, I don't get to any comfort. It's like absolutely not. You absolutely have tell density. So what are the things in my life that naturally help me settle? Can I give one more example of that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, there's in resources. So I was at a party a couple days ago, well, a couple months ago with an executive here at Google. Live in Boulder. Boulder has a site of Google. We were at this party, and I don't drink, but there were some had a few drinks at this party, and they were trying to they want dance thing like a dance party, and the phone, the whole thing is like we gotta get the Bluetooth speaker to pick up the phone, blah blah blah. Nobody after Google walked up and was like, I'm gonna figure this out and getting a couple drinks on him. And he started getting really, really anxious, Hannah, because he was like like moving around, trying to like figure it out. And I don't, for whatever reason, this Bluetooth was just not working. And he kept saying to himself, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And I think normally in normal everyday circumstances, that probably happens internally, but I
Right.
think because of his, so he's like, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And it was beautiful, Hannah, because he figured it out within a few moments. I mean, literally within like maybe a minute, he figured it out, and it was taking other people 10, 15 minutes. But I think partially is because he had that inner resource of being able to really soothe himself to really focus and do the thing he needed to do. So resources. Another great example is like squeezing our arms or like rubbing our thighs. There are so many different things we can do to
Hmm.
help ourselves settle.
Oh,
So
so good.
nourishment,
So
nurturement.
yeah, so practical. When I first started learning how to self-soothe in this way. So again,
Hmm.
like several
Self-soothing.
years
Hmm.
ago, I was mid 30s, right?
Hmm.
I have a like a squishmallow, like a
Yeah.
stuffy. She's so soft. It's so perfect. And it's like perfect for like squeezing really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also like literally like squeezing my own arms, like touching
Hmm.
touching those like how would I want to be held right now? How would I want to be hugged?
Yeah.
And then of course blankets. So
Hmm.
I
Weighted
think
blankets.
yes, I think
Those are amazing. Yeah.
we don't it's like we think as adults that oh like we can have these nice things for our home and that kind of thing, but we don't necessarily put the importance of like oh I can have these things because they are comforting to me, and
Yeah.
that is like
And that's
actually
enough.
really important. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
really important to do.
Totally. Yeah.
So I love that. So those tips: find your favorite mug, right?
Find your
Get
favorite mug.
yourself the most comfy blanket you can.
Yeah.
It's okay for adults to have stuffed animals, right? All these things.
Totally.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. It's
those are
so
our tips
good.
for today. Well,
Yeah.
Matthew, thank you so much for being here with me today. This was such a lovely conversation. I loved it. All of the information to find you will be in the show notes. So super easy to go over to say it again. What's your company?
Oh, body-based breakthrough.
Body based
B3.
breakthrough B3. Well, I'm X squared, so we're good.
There you go. Yeah, we got all the
Works. I love it. Thank you so much, Matthew. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. Same.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.